Hi, it's Matt Dalby. I'm back with another episode of Santiago's Dead Media. This time I want to ramble on a bit about my birthday, which by the time this goes out will almost certainly have been months ago, because I've got a few other things recorded and stuff kind of lined up, ready to go before this, plus some of the other contributors to the Wasp cast I think are wanting to do audio stuff. I certainly hope so, so there'll be their stuff slotted in as well. So my birthday, which was yesterday at the time of recording this, but as I say, will be months ago by the time you hear it, that was on the 23rd of October, which was a Sunday. Now, the tides worked out fine, and there was a high tide in the morning, and the next high tide was due at 6 in the evening. Now, allowing a couple of hours each side for the tide coming in. If I got there at 12 and walked out, I'd get there for somewhere around 2, a little after 2. And that would give me some time there to be there and turn around and then walk back to Lancaster and not be at risk of drowning. Got to Lancaster. It was a nice day. It was a sunny day, not particularly warm. It's October. It's late October. It's not going to be particularly warm, but it was not. It was not freezing. It wasn't especially windy. It was dry, and so walked from the station, kind of over the hill down to the river, across the Millennium Bridge, and followed the path out towards Sunderland. Now, what I hadn't banked on, even though I'd sort of been out there, I've been driven out there in a car before, and I've walked part way. I've walked a little way past the pub's Golden Ball, which is sort of somewhere between, probably, but maybe halfway between Lancaster and Overton. I've been a little way past that, but I hadn't realised that slightly after that you've then got a long, fairly substantial section where you're just on roads and there's no verge for you to walk on. There's certainly no pavement. The roads aren't massively narrow, but they're not wide either. They're sort of, by city road standards, they're fairly narrow. They're certainly extremely windy, with tall hedges, very poor visibility ahead. There's not many places where you've got much more than kind of 100 metres or so of visibility. You can't see what's coming ahead. But of course, because people are having to kind of get in and out of the point sort of as quickly as possible between the tides, and because they know the roads, because of this, and despite the fact that there might be cyclists, bikers, there are concealed entrances, there might be farm traffic, despite all this, people still drive there over large vehicles much too fast. There are signs all over the place. There's signs on the roads telling you to slow the fuck down. Because, again, poor visibility, winding roads. It's not ideal for a pedestrian. It's really, really not recommended. So I negotiated that section. There is the one thing that makes that section bearable is everything's still kind of green. The hedgerows are nice, and there's a lot. This is late October. There's a lot of blackberries. There's huge clusters of them, and ripe blackberries. Amazing, quite small. I was a bit anxious at first because I thought, hey, look, they're small. They're going to be kind of hard and sour. They're not going to be very nice. Nope, most of them are soft and edible. They're ripe, and not that kind of soft that you sometimes get at the end of the season where they just squish and collapse into nothing the moment you look at them. These were, proper ripe blackberries. So that made that preferable. So also did cursing at motorists who drove a bit too close as they disappeared into the distance, because swearing makes everything better. And swearing at volume, because there's nobody there to hear you. There's sheep in that field, but they don't give a fuck about your language. There's some cows over there, but they're not even listening. There's some birds. As far as I can tell, they can't imitate human speech, so, yeah. And it makes it nice, you need to vent. And it's actually quite nice. There's these dramatic, in between the cars, terrifying you and having to kind of cross from one side of the road to the other to make sure that you've got maximum visibility for people coming either way, so that they know you're there and they don't clip you with their wing mirror or something equally unpleasant. It's nice. It's very pleasant. There's dramatic clouds, blue sky mostly, all sorts of interesting colours. There's bird song all over the place. There's these blackberries. There's some wind turbines turning and kind of making this very kind of low frequency noise, which is quite nice. I don't know what it's like to live in proximity to it, but actually, if you're there, if you're living out there, you're very exposed. You've got a lot of wind, you've got a lot of other noises. This is probably one of the least of your worries. And, the weather's nice. It's warm. My coat is open. I'm actually quite warm because I've got a backpack on with my packed lunch. And, I'm already feeling like I'm kind of coastal because I've been through that section by the Golden Ball where that's kind of mud banks and mud flats. That also gets flooded from time to time. I'm kind of going up and down hills and come to Overton, through Overton, and then drop down, and you're on the causeway out to Sunderland Point, and the causeway definitely gets flooded. This is not somewhere you want to be when the tide comes in, because the tide comes in fast. I've seen it from higher ground, further away from the point. It comes in fast, and you will get trapped if you don't know what you're doing. If you're not careful, you will get cut off or trapped or covered in water. You really need to be safe. This is why I was being sort of super cautious and trying to be aware of the tides. And right down here, just as I'm coming down, there's a herd of cows. They're on the road. They're also on the mud. Some of them are kind of on the mud. They're sort of not sinking in much more than an inch. Some of them are kind of right in the mud, like up to their knees and all four legs in the mud, eating grass off these bits of mud flats and mud banks. And there's three cars. There's one that's trying to come towards Overton. There's one that's going away, and there's another one that's coming towards Overton but has slightly pulled off the road, which is a really bad mistake because it's quite a bad drop, and it's mud immediately once you're off there. And they'd kind of got a wheel trap, but all the drivers knew each other. They were all sort of getting together, and I think they managed to get the car. It wasn't kind of fatally stuck or anything. It was just slightly slipping, and all the other wheels were on the road. It was just one back wheel that was off. And the reason the cars were in this alignment was they were trying to get through the cows, but without panicking them, without scattering them. Trouble is, cows are very curious, and if you're going quite slowly, they will be wandering up to you. They'll be wandering up to your car. So they've they're sort of trying to creep through this herd of cows. So I walk through these the two lines of cows on either side of the road, and carry on walking up to the point. And there's a lot of birds, particularly there's a couple of herons. There's something I think. I keep thinking of it as an oyster catch, but I think I'm actually wrong. It's a kind of wading kind of shoreline bird with an orange beak. There's a couple of those, but actually predominantly what there are out there are a lot of curlews. A lot of curlews walking about on these mud banks, and flying from mud bank to mud bank and calling as they go. Lots of curlews. I grew up in the countryside, actually inland, and we would get curlews in the summer. And again, you'd hear them calling, and you'd see them flying quite low, and they would sometimes fly very close to you. And I don't really ever see them in Manchester, so it was good having a huge amount of them out here. Walked on a little further. I basically got as far as Sunderland. I didn't venture much beyond Sunderland, much further onto the point, because I wanted to make sure that I could get back to Lancaster, because I was walking, and it takes, as I say, more than 2 hours from Lancaster out to this point. And I know that at this end I'm fine. I'm probably okay on the causeway, because I can see the tide is still out, although I know that there is a tidal bore there that comes down with quite some speed and with quite a height on it. And I didn't want to get caught out, because the next low tide, I would end up getting back to Lancaster very late, and I could still I had no problems that I'd be able to get back to Manchester, but then I would have been getting into work this morning with very little sleep. So I was there. It was really nice day, really interesting. The water is very distant. There's lots of mud. This environment is it's kind of suitable for birds and for shellfish, and not much else. The cows I was kind of a bit worried about. I think they will make their way onto higher ground, but the one that I saw up to all four of its knees in mud, if it was in that position and the water was coming in fast, it would be in trouble. And now it had actually extricated itself by the time I walked back, but it's risky. It wouldn't surprise me if there are cows lost there every year, because it's inherently risky having them wandering around on these mud banks and just freely in this area where there are whatever it is, 2 tides a day, high tides, where the tide comes in quite fast, and where it will be cutting off certain areas and rising over most of this ground. A lot of this ground is very, like a friend said in a comment, it's very contingent. Half of the time it is underwater. There were interesting sounds. I actually was reading more about it today, and in some ways I kind of wish I'd had more time, or I'd come at another time where I could have stayed around on Sunderland as the tide came in and then gone back later, because apparently the tidal bore makes a kind of really interesting noise. As it was, there was a boat. I don't know if it was a fishing boat or more of a leisure thing, but the wind through its rigging was making quite an engine-like sound, a kind of high-pitched sounded kind of like an engine turning over. I was looking to try and see what it was making this noise until I realised it was the rigging on this boat, which was high and dry. I mean, it was a few metres above the water level, on a mud bank, because that's where it'll be most of the time. And there's a huge, there's a huge vista across Morecambe Bay. There's land that you've left behind, and there's the settlement of Sunderland, which, as I said, I didn't particularly get too far into. And then I turned round and went back. I didn't even really do any filming or sketching there. I looking back, I had more time to spend there. I could have walked further onto the point. I could have spent maybe half an hour, maybe even an hour there, and still gotten back in safety. So I'll remember this for future, for kind of the next time I go down. Although probably next time I might well drive or cycle. If I was going to drive, I would have to learn to drive first, so that's way, way, way in the future. The next visit is most likely cycling. Although I'd have to get my goddamn cycle to Lancaster, I really can't be bothered to cycle all that way or take it on the bus. Yeah, maybe there's a cycle hire place there. Have to look into that. So, walked back, same drama, in fact worse drama with the cows. This time there's more traffic going both ways, and the cows are kind of strung out and across the road over a much greater distance. So to take a shortcut, I hop off the road, not thinking ahead, not thinking what's coming, and kind of walk across this very wet, muddy, grassy area, kind of around this log jam until I reach a sort of a river, or what would be a river when the water's high. And I realise that I can't cross this because this is several metres wide, and even with a run-up I'm not confident I could jump that distance and not land in mud, even if I was able to run fast enough on this surface and jump and do that without either slipping or sinking into the mud. But also, if I walk to the side and try to get onto the road, then again I've got at least maybe 2 metres or more of mud bank between me and the road, and again, even if I jump and I manage to hit the road, that's slippy, and there's still sort of cars and cows around, which are going to make that a risky manoeuvre. So I have to go back, get back onto the road, more or less where I left it, walk up behind the most recent of the cars. And again, there's cows and cars blocking the entire road. I can just about edge round the car on the other side, get between the cows and walk on ahead. And so that's what I do, and get back into Overton and face this rat run of winding, narrow, hedge-ridden roads with poor visibility, and over large cars driving too fast despite the road telling them to constantly slow the fuck down. But still blackberries, still nice weather. Lots of birds singing. Occasionally you see sheep in a field next to your cows in a field, or it opens up and you can see wind turbines. Beyond that, Heysham Power Station. Somewhere a little further beyond that, you've got Morecambe, kind of just out of sight. and it's attractive and nice. And eventually, I'm back, sort of on the road near the Golden Ball. And once I pass the Golden Ball, then I hop off the footpath, and you can walk. Certainly, while the tide is out, there's a kind of grassy area that's usually, certainly when the tide is out, above water. So I walk along that, and as I'm walking along that back to Lancaster, I shoot some video and take some sketches, even get some photos. And that again is attractive. Looking back, there's the sun, still relatively high, out over the bay, through these dramatic clouds. There's the sky overhead, mostly blue sky. It's wide expanse of the River Lune. The water still very low, still kind of winding down the middle, and these huge mud banks rising up from it, and birds walking on this, flying over. Herons, mostly. I saw some swans early on. And it looks great looking across at the other side of the river, where there's sort of new buildings going up. And then I can look further down and see Lancaster sort of emerging in the distance. And it was a really beautiful, enjoyable day. It took probably a little more than 4 hours. It took. I got off the train at about 8 minutes past 12, and when I got back to the station, I was just in time for the train to Manchester Airport at 27 minutes past 4. So, yeah, just about an hour, about 4 hours and 20 minutes, most of which was walking, although I did stop and, as I say, and sketch and video various things. And yeah, I mean, seeing all the flotsam, it's jetsam once it's on the land, all the broken bits of wood, bits of plastic and debris and litter. Mostly actually wood, though, and kind of organic matter. And also, as I was walking back, a very flat, very brown, because it was covered in mud, fish that had been dropped on the bank, which I filmed. And as I filmed it, I began to notice quite how badly this desiccated looking fish smelled. It really stank. It was certainly mouldering quite badly, although it wasn't sort of visibly particularly obvious. It just looked flat and desiccated. And that was pretty much it. Walked back into the city, back over the Millennium Bridge a slightly different way, and back into the station. I had no plan of getting any particular train. I just knew there are regular trains. There's a couple every hour, and they go on until sometime after 11. So I knew there was a fair chance of getting a train within about half an hour. As it was, I managed to get there within a minute or 2 minutes of the train arriving. And I had a really nice day. I would recommend it. I mean, Sunderland Point, certainly do it. If you do it, particularly if you've got young kids or people who are nervous of traffic or who you think are a bit careless, probably don't walk. Cycle or drive. If you drive, be aware that you might encounter cows. You'll certainly encounter other traffic coming against you, and it'll probably be going fairly fast. remember that Sunderland Point isn't just a tourist destination. Overton isn't just a tourist destination. These are actually places where people live and work. So, respect that. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it for a visit. And again, be careful of the tides. Make sure you know when the high tide is. Leave some space on either side of that for getting in and getting out, because you don't want to be stranded or swept away or cut off. You want to be safe out there. But if you can do it, most definitely. I didn't on this occasion go and see Sambo's grave or any of the other kind of tourist attractions. Again, that's something for the future. I wasn't massively bothered on this occasion. It was just an excuse for a walk and to get some images and to have a fun time and hear some sounds. And I did. I heard the wind and rigging. I heard the low frequency noise from the wind turbines. Was the bird song. Obviously the sounds of the cows and the sheep. Some wind sounds, some sounds of water. Just a really, really fun day out. The train back, I actually had to stand. That's normal. It was a relatively short journey. Obviously, I had to walk back from the station and get home. But yeah, that ain't nothing. that's normal. I walk everywhere. I walk to and from work and walk on my lunch. So yeah, again, Sunderland Point, do it, but do it safely. All right, that's me done for now. See ya. Bye.